I am obsessed with Palestine. I don't just mean I love the olive groves and the people and the land and the smell of jasmine and cardamom coffee in the morning. I'm obsessed with the geography of Palestine. Growing up in New York, I was told over and over again that I didn't exist. My people didn't exist. Palestine didn't exist. So I searched for it. I searched for Palestine on every map and globe I could find. I knew it was there. I had visited many times. However, my search for proof was to no avail. Until one day, I happened upon an old globe in the library of Brooklyn Technical High School. I looked at it carefully. I was sure I was not going to see what I was looking for. However, to my joy and satisfaction, there it was, a small strip of land between Egypt and Lebanon and Jordan, labeled Palestine.
I was born in Romania during World War II. I grew up in Tel Aviv, spent years on a kibbutz, and was part of the socialist Zionist youth movement. As a liberal Zionist, I felt strongly connected to Israel and prided myself on my progressive values. I was against wars, racism, and discrimination. I didn't know how much I didn't know. My education, or I should say my indoctrination, began in first grade. Starting every Friday, before dismissal, the teacher used to pass around the blue box, asking for donation, which were mandatory, to the Jewish National Fund, the JNF. We were forever being told the JNF was reclaiming the desert, planting trees, creating parks. We had no idea that these parks were built on the ruins of Palestinian towns and villages. We were told the Arabs were lazy cultivators and neglected the land. When you look at the Palestinian villages and beautiful terraced farms, they are an integral part of the landscape, unlike the settlements which look like they sprout out of nowhere. When you see some cactus on the land, you can be sure there used to be a Palestinian farm there.
My family were prosperous farmers and merchants when the Nakba in 1948 occurred. I was 8 years old. We went from living on a thriving farm to being refugees in camps. And then we became stateless, homeless people. My family tried to stay in our country, moving from place to place. Every time the Zionists bombed a city, we moved to another city. In 1951, the United Nations rented camps in Jordan for the Palestinian refugees for 99 years. It has been 70 years since then. Before the camps, we lived in Ramla, a city in central Palestine between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. We lived in peace, and Muslims, Jews, and Christians worked together and celebrated each other's holidays.
My father was born in Hebron, Palestine. His father, my grandfather, was a Turkish Jew who went to Palestine to avoid serving in the Turkish army. When Palestine became a Turkish protectorate, he was drafted into the army anyway. As a draft dodger who did not believe in war, his only choice was to emigrate to America. My grandmother had always lived in Palestine. Her father was a pharmacist herbalist. His customers were both Muslims and Jews. They lived peacefully in Palestine with none of the angst that European Jews experienced. In fact, my grandmother used to always say, Jews had no problems with Muslims until the British got involved. We lived together, we helped each other, we were friends and neighbors.
After the Balfour Declaration, everything changed. Palestine was partitioned, and although the Zionists got almost 60% of the land, they wanted more. In July 1948, the Zionists occupied Lod. People in Lod got ready for the war because they knew that the Zionists would attack them. But the surprise was that the Zionist army was disguised in Jordanian army uniforms, and the Jordanian flags were on their tanks. The people thought they were getting help from Jordan. But it was Israel that made this plan to kill them. The village fell after fierce house-to-house fighting. During and after the battle for the village, at least 107 Palestinians were killed, including women and children. Some were shot, while others died when hand grenades were thrown into their homes. Apart from the bodies lying in the streets, there were an additional 150 corpses found in one cistern alone. Among them, people who had been either decapitated or disemboweled. Several villages were taken prisoner. I remember a Yemeni Zionist came to a supermarket in Souk al-Nasra and asked the owner if he could leave his bag for 30 minutes. And when the Yemeni guy left, the bag exploded. There was a bomb inside, and many people were killed that day.
We learn the Ashkenazi or European Israeli narrative only. Not a word about the expulsion of the indigenous Palestinians. We had Bible studies 3 to 5 hours a week. The Bible was used as a history document that gives us, the Jewish people, the right to live in the promised land. In other words, a secular society is using a great collection of ancient writings, turning God into a real estate agent. The expulsion of over 700,000 Palestinians and over 400 villages and towns that were razed to the ground and replaced by Jewish towns, villages, and kibbutzim were not part of the story.
The success of the Zionist project is dependent on maintaining the myth that Palestine was a land without a people for a people without a land. Any transgression of this mantra would incur severe consequences. I learned this early on during a trip across the bridge when I was 7 or 8 years old. For most Palestinians in the diaspora, the only way home is through the bridge. Wait, stop. Don't imagine Verrazano. It's not the Golden Gate. It's a few wooden planks atop a puddle that connect the West Bank and the East Bank of the Jordan River. It was an arduous trip back then. Your luggage was dumped and ransacked. Your body was strip searched and patted down. It was true for old or young, man or woman. Do you see how democratic Israel is? In all cases, during this particular trip, as a soldier checked our luggage, meaning dumped all of our belongings into these dirty plastic crates, physically handling even the most intimate items, including underwear, he alighted on a small jewelry case. He opened it, and lo and behold, he found a major transgression, something very dangerous and sinister, more threatening than weapons of mass destruction. He found, are you ready for this? A gold charm of the map of Palestine. All of Palestine. Historic Palestine. The Israeli soldier who found the map realized right away what a major crime we had committed. He gave the necklace to my mother and told her, get rid of it. But my mother couldn't get herself to throw away such a precious item. She told my sister to wear the necklace backwards and that it would be hidden by her hair. Of course, it was quickly discovered when we were taken to be physically searched by a female Israeli soldier. She called her superior right away, and in the weeks to come, we would get to know Captain Yaakov very, very well. On his command, we were herded into a room by a number of soldiers brandishing their M16s, and soon enough, my mother was arguing with them and my sister was screaming, and Captain Yaakov swore to my mother that so long as he was in charge, we would never be allowed to enter. Well, it took 4 trips to the bridge, 2 sets of permits, one of which had to be smuggled out of Palestine by Amti Zarlouleh, my 60-year-old aunt, the intervention of an amazing Israeli lawyer, Felice Langer, an article in the local newspaper, and my mother's tenacity to finally get us across the bridge that year.
My father always identified as a Palestinian Jew. Many people in the US believe that's an impossibility, a contradiction in terms. Not true. We exist, and more of us than you think. Palestine has always been a country of Muslims, Christians, and Jews. My father was very Jewish and very anti-Zionist. I hear his voice clearly.
Esther, why should the Palestinians suffer and pay for the Holocaust when they had nothing to do with it? And all this stuff about a Jewish state? Do we really need a Jewish state? Jews are nomads. We take culture everywhere. Maybe the United States needs a Jewish state to protect their oil interests. Don't forget, Esther, the US didn't let us in when it mattered. Israel schmizrael. Do you know that the Zionists made deals with Hitler? They don't care about the Jews. They care only about themselves. The Jewish establishment has made a deal with the devil. Nothing good will come of it, believe me. And what Israel has done to the Palestinians, I hate to say it, but Israel is doing to the Palestinians what was done to the Jews. Don't talk to me about Zionism.
I am very proud of this voice, a voice that dared to be so different than everything that surrounded us.